Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Rail Worker Town Hall. My name is Greg Regan. I'm the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. TTD is the largest transportation labor federation in the country, and we represent 37 labor unions across all modes of transportation, including, critically, the 13 unions involved in national contract negotiations with the freight railroads right now. Freight rail workers have been bargaining for a new contract for 3 years. During that time, they have not received a single dollar in a raise over that period. And yet, during that time, they have performed historic work, delivering food, fuel, things that kept our country moving during the pandemic. Since 2005, 7 major railroad companies have made $146 billion in profit on the backs of these workers. More money in the history of railroading, even more than the Gilded Age era, back when robber barons ruled the roost. And yet during that same time, they've laid off 45,000 employees from this industry. Instead of recognizing the value of these workers, the companies have enacted massive job cuts, offered the remaining workers a net pay cut in their contract negotiations. They're asking these workers to deliver the biggest profits in the history of railroading to take a pay cut. That is completely unacceptable. So right now, the livelihoods of 115,000 rail workers are at stake. And frankly, the economy is at stake, the health of our economy in terms of what they're delivering and making sure that we are continuing to function and remain competitive in this country. So today, we're lucky enough to have a number of workers here share their personal stories about what they're experiencing and how the railroad's business practices have affected their daily lives and their ability to do their jobs. So now I'll turn it over to Secretary Treasurer Sherry Semmelsberger so she can introduce today's moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. My name is Sherry Semmelsberger, and I am the Secretary Treasurer of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. I was elected in February 2021 after serving in the labor movement and with TTD for over 20 years. I am the first female elected officer of our department. The dedication to the labor movement runs deep in my family, dating back to my great-grandfathers. My maternal great-grandfather migrated to the US from Italy in the early 1900s. His first union job was with ATU Local 689, working on the streetcar tracks in Washington, D.C. My paternal great-grandfather was a police officer at the Washington Railway Terminal. My paternal grandfather began his career at 17 years old, working in the rail yard at Union Station in Washington, D.C. He worked his way up to yardmaster in charge and retired after 48 years of dedicated service. I have been a card-carrying union member for half of my life, and this is one family I am very proud to be a part of. And today it is my honor and privilege to be with all of you and to introduce our brother, Secretary Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, Fred Redmond. At the historic convention this past June, he was unanimously elected as the highest ranking African-American officer in the history of America's labor movement. Fred began his career as a member of the United Steelworkers in 1973. While working at Reynolds Metal in Chicago, he immediately became an active voice in his local union, serving as shop steward and vice president. He then served 3 terms as local president. In 1996, he joined USW staff, working with local unions in the Chicago area before accepting a position at the International Union's headquarters in Pittsburgh. For decades, Fred continued to serve the USW in various staff and leadership roles. And in 2006, he was elected as International Vice President of Human Affairs, overseeing the union's Civil and Human Rights Department and working with USW allies across the country and responding to voting rights attacks and combating economic inequality. He has spent his entire life fighting for justice in the workplace and throughout our communities. And today, he's here to talk about economic justice with our nation's freight railroad workers. Please welcome our brother, Secretary Treasurer Fred Redmond.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I want to thank you for that introduction, Sherry. And I want to thank you and Greg Regan and the entire TTD leadership team. I mean, look, you've been nothing short of amazing, and so have Americans' freight rail workers. Heroic is the word that comes to my mind. I mean, you have delivered the essential goods throughout the pandemic. You were tireless and dedicated, loyal, but loyalty, it has to go both ways. And as Greg said, these railroad companies made record profits during the pandemic. And we have had plenty of examples recently of what happens when greedy corporations and greedy companies fail to appreciate the workers who made their profits possible. Kellogg's, Nabisco, John Deere, and healthcare systems all across the United States who have refused to share in the wealth that our members create every day. So today I'm privileged to be joined by a dozen or so freight railroad workers who will share their stories and share some insight on the current freight rail landscape. So look, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Greg mentioned workforce cuts in his introduction, and I would like to start there. So I'm going to start with Devin. Devin, I'm going to start with you. How have the workforce cuts, or rather lack of workers, Devin, how have that affected you?
Yeah. So, it's getting to the point where it's really unsafe. I mean, that's the reality. We just had a brother of ours in California lose his legs in an incident that, it can be directly traced back to short staffing. We cannot keep up with the amount of work we've had that we have to do yet. Our direct supervisors know that this is a major issue as well, and they can agree with us. But, the corporate side of things, they don't have to deal with it directly. So it doesn't matter to them. That's how it looks from our point of view. So they don't work that hard to get more workers. They just want to make more money. In my area specifically, we've had trouble finding workers for a long time. I'm in the oil field area, and they have more pay and sometimes better benefits. And the railroad, you just get paid less and you're away from home a lot more. So, it's not hard to figure out where you should be. I would hope that the railroads would be able to see that they need to be able to have a good contract for us to be able to retain and get new employees. So many people are quitting, and the ones that stick around are disgruntled, and they take little pride anymore in their work. And that's not who we are as railroaders. So we're all demoralized and pushed to where we just don't care anymore. It's a little rough. And so go ahead.
No, I was going to say, thank you, Devin, when we talk about people losing their legs and losing their limbs, then, I think that you have really analyzed what a critical situation this is, particularly in regards to safety and health. So I want to thank you for that. I want to turn to Mike Gage. Mike, could you tell us what you do in the rail industry and what has your experience been, Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Redmond. My name is Mike Gage. I'm an electrician with IBW Local 1920 in North Platte, Nebraska. And a lot of what Devin said rings true here too. The shortage of workers has really had an effect on us. Those of us that are lucky enough not to have been furloughed during all this still are dealing with the fallout from being shorthanded. An excess of work is one thing that's there, but also the way the seniority works in my craft, in my location, is if you don't have the people under you or the whiskers, then you don't have the days off that you've earned. Like after 17 years, I have Monday, Tuesdays, the best days I can have off. And thankfully I have day shift. There are people with 15 years or so that are still working third shift or second shift if they're lucky. Same with holidays. You can't plan anything around the holidays. They told most of us when we hired on the railroad, after 10 years, you paid your dues. You'll get part of the weekend off. You'll be on day shift. You don't have to worry about holidays. And now you've got guys with over 20 years working holidays that before this they had off. In 2016, we had 309 people on our roster, and now we're down to 191. So, and the thing is that 60 of these were laid off by December 2020. It's not pandemic related. It's PSR related. I don't know what the answer is. I know that there's no shift differential. There's no weekend pay differential, and the carrier doesn't seem to think that, we sacrifice anything by working this way, but we really do. I think the amount of people we've lost to attrition, we've had 60 people furloughed, 4 come back. A lot of people don't want to come back. There's an agreement from 1987 that says if you work for the railroad for less than 3 years and you're laid off for more than a year, they don't have to call you back. So they lose their seniority there. It's been kind of a mess, really.
Well, thanks for that, Mike. And what we get out of Mike's remarks is that the workforce cuts are really putting a burden on the remaining workers. And one of the other burdens I've heard a lot about are the worker attendance policies that the freight railroads have implemented. And I understand that all the railroad companies have them. And the newest one is at the BNSF rail rate for conductors and engineers. And I'd like to hear from a worker about how this attendance policy or high bid affects them. So I'm on to call on Carrie Smart. Carrie, you're a conductor at BNSF. Can you share your thoughts with us, particularly in regards to these attendance policies? Carrie?
Sure. The BNSF high vis attendance policy is the most egregious attendance policy that we have seen. It allows no time off without a penalty. It doesn't allow us to spend any time with our families, make appointments, schedule appointments for our own health and safety. Our last attendance policy was manageable, where we can make appointments, spend some time with our family, and pick and choose what we miss. Now it's just miss everything. Management has made it quite clear that they believe we are expendable. However, their big profits are on our backs while they continue to stay home, make their appointments, and spend their time with their families.
Wow. So what we could surmise by that is after the railroads inducted mass job cuts across the industry, they expect the remaining workers to keep up with the same level of productivity. Now, there's clearly a retention issue because of the incredible strain that's being put on workers. And I'd like to hear from someone about that. Rob, what do you have to say about this strain that's being placed on the remaining workers? Rob Hollifield?
Yes, sir. Robert Hollifield, IBEW Communications Electronics Technician. In our area, our jobs have always been a 6-day a week, 24-hour a day on call position. We are monthly rated, and therefore they basically have us and we can't miss call. Even on Sunday, which is my rest day, I have to take my own call from my territory, because if I don't, the next guy that's in line for that may be 2 hours away, and I hate to put that strain on him. So I'm doing the job today that 2 years ago was being done by 3.5 people, which means I'm also holding call 24 hours a day, really 7 days a week, mandated 6 days a week for those jobs. And it just takes a toll on you. You're emotionally, you're just drained. Every time the phone rings, you just kind of go into a minor panic, wondering where you're going to have to go and how long you're going to be gone away from your family.
Well, Rob, I know from talking to workers in the industry that you're not alone. There are so many workers in this industry whose personal lives have been affected by the demand of these jobs. And I'm going to call on Eugene Martinez. And Eugene, can you talk about any ways that this job has put an extra strain on you and your family? Eugene?
Yes, sir. Eugene Martinez, National Conference of Fireman Orders. I am a mechanical service operator in Houston. The way it puts a strain on family is you miss a lot of events. You don't get to get those special, meaningful times with your kids or your family, you miss birthdays, graduations, sporting events. Like my kids, they play high school sports, and a lot of games I miss because I have to work. And I speak for a lot of people when, we like family time and we enjoy spending time with our family. And it shouldn't just be work.
Right. Well, thanks, Eugene. We had a little problem with the audio, but Eugene articulated how this strain on the workers in this industry is impacting time that he spends with family gatherings and the opportunity he have to spend time with his children. And I understand also that Eugene works, he's being expected to work between 70 and 80 hours a week. And, Reese Murtaugh, I want to go to you, Reese. You have a young daughter who's in elementary school, and you're on the executive board of the PTA. So how have this job, since the companies have instituted these atrocious work schedules and these attendance policies, how have the job affected your personal life, Reese?
Hello, Reese Murtaugh, IAM roving mechanic. So system production, traveling mechanics work in big work groups, and we're gone during the week. We're home on the weekends, and depending on how far you have to travel, that might mean you're home one day. And you travel on your personal time, and they do not pay you an hourly rate. There's a travel allowance that caps out at $300 to travel on. Wow. If you have a long drive, say 13, 14 hours, you're paid almost a minimum wage to travel on your personal time. Other things affecting us is the conditions we work in, 14-hour days, 16-hour days. We're out in all weather. We got tool bags on our backs. We're walking up and down the tracks. We're fixing stuff all day long. It's hard on our bodies, and we're just never home. And it's just a hard life. And it's a good group of guys, good, hard-working group of guys out there.
Thanks, Reese. And I could imagine such a schedule also take a toll on your personal life with your family and, spending time with your children and everything. And, I want to call on Esmeralda Monologo. She's from the TCU. And Esmeralda, how have these schedules, these attendance policies, how have it affected your personal life, Esmeralda?
To be honest with you, I have no personal life. It feels that home is at work, and I just go on vacation for 6 hours. I literally work about 70 hours a week, and I work 16 hours almost every single day. Wow. I have 3 kids, and they seem that they're like, you know what, Mom, just quit, because it's not fair for us. I know that 15 years ago, I signed up to work for the railroad, and it was something awesome. I thought I had made it in. I am first generation union worker, but it seems that working for this company, we are just a number. We are not human, and they just use us until someone gets hurt. I work for Union Pacific Railroad, and it just seems that the more you try to do, the more they take away from you. So it is not fair. It's a major impact for our kids, because if the parents are not home, who's taking care of the kids? So right. It just doesn't affect us. It affects our children also.
That's powerful, Esmeralda. I mean, to think that what's being imposed on you as a worker of this country is having a strong emotional toll on your children also. So, look, there's a huge emotional toll that workers are paying just to keep these jobs. Correct. We're talking about time away from family, missing important family memories and milestones, and even missing your kids grow up sometimes. But, in addition to the emotional toll, there's also a physical toll. I mean, folks could only go so far, and the physical demands that's being placed on you as workers, is obviously taking a huge physical toll. And I know these are demanding jobs, and I want to hear from someone about what's that's like, the physical toll. So let me go to Dennis. Dennis Sabina. Dennis, could I hear from you about the physical toll that these schedules and this situation is taking upon you as a worker? Dennis? Dennis, I think you're on mute. Could you unmute, please? There you go.
How's that?
Thanks. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Yeah. All the layoffs and everything obviously have put us all into a position to work more. So, obviously that's going to take a toll on our bodies. And not only that, the workforce is getting older. For us, especially, our average age is about 50 years old. So the longer that all this PSR stuff and everything goes on, the older we're all going to get. And it takes a toll on your body. We have, working conditions, the walking conditions are terrible for us. I just had a knee replacement because of it. And again, the workforce is getting older. We're not as quick as we used to be. We're not as sharp as we used to be. And those things all need to be taken into consideration whenever they're hiring people, it seems, because, I get the younger generation maybe doesn't want to work like the older generation. They want weekends off and they expect to have daylight and all that after being there for 6 months. So that just doesn't happen. So they can't keep the workers. So in turn, that puts us behind the 8 ball as far as, more hours. We have overtime, which is good. A lot of people like that, but you can work as much as you want, which turns into an unsafe condition. After 16 hours or so, people aren't necessarily as sharp as they were in the beginning of the shift. But there's guys that'll work around the clock. Yeah. And I had brought this up with one of the senior vice presidents, and he didn't want that to go on, but nothing has ever changed. He said, 16 hours should be it. And he goes, and I don't really even like that. And he was supposed to look into it, and nothing's ever changed. So, and then on top of that, they're trying to force overtime as part of a emergency situation. And I've been fighting this battle that because you laid off so many people, that doesn't constitute an emergency. An emergency is an act of God, a derailment, or some mishap, or weather probably would fall under that, but certainly not layoffs. So that's what we've been fighting, kind of things like that. But then, each department has a little piece of the pie, which encompasses makes up the whole pie. So in turn, that our department can't do certain things because of other departments not being able to do things. Walking conditions being one of them. Unsafe conditions. The rail's been breaking lately. We've had a lot of derailments in the yard, things like that. So it's a compounded issue that just continues and continues to get worse.
Wow. Thanks for that, Dennis.
Sure.
Justin, I'm going to go to Justin Radcliffe. Justin, how have these work schedules and this work situation and the demands, how have it taken a physical toll on you? What has it been like, Justin?
I'm Justin Radcliffe, signal maintainer, Decatur, Alabama. Signal maintainers are responsible for the inspection and testing and troubleshooting of wayside signal systems, PTC systems, and highway grade crossings. Sometimes the construction and installation as well. I've been on the job for 24 years. I'm the 4th generation railroader. My dad retired as a general supervisor from the signal department, and it's sickening to me what the company has done to employees. The railroad line I work on goes from Memphis, Tennessee to Stevenson, Alabama. Due to the job cuts, all maintainers' territories have gotten bigger. That means more equipment and miles for signal employees to have to cover. Bigger territories with less people have led to traveling further and more frequent interruptions outside regular working hours. I live in Alabama, which is in the eastern part of this line segment. My first 17 or 18 years, I never had to take a trouble call in Mississippi or Tennessee. Since the job cuts, I've been several times. I'm an early riser. So usually on a Saturday morning, I'm awake before 5 a.m. So I've had trouble calls come in at 7 p.m. in the evening and have to travel to Memphis, Tennessee. That's a 4-hour minimum drive in a company truck.
Wow.
I can work 8 hours when I get there and drive 4 hours back home. That's 30 hours without sleep. Over a 20-year career of not having a normal sleep cycle, I'm sure you can imagine the constant state of fatigue
Wow.
one lives with.
Wow. So Dennis and Justin has really explained to us, and all of the workers on this call agree, that the toll that is taken on people's bodies and the physical toll that these workers are taking and these workers are facing and dealing with every day, all of these workers can agree that, you know, workers are fatigued. And these railroad companies are demanding that workers do more with less. And we have exhausted workers now that operating freights, you know, throughout this country is, you know, operating in the same way in terms of, you know, really not recognizing the fatigue factor that these work schedules and the toll that it's taking on these workers' bodies and the effects it's having on their country. I'm sorry, and the effects that it's having on their families. And look, I mean, this is affecting freight trains throughout this country. And I want to hear from someone about the safety concerns that are present. So I'm going to call on Bobby. Bobby, is Bobby with us? If Bobby could just talk about the safety concerns that we have in this industry since we've been going through these egregious schedules. Is Bobby here?
Yes, sir. A lot of
Okay.
our safety concerns address the new hires. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been on the railroad for 15 years. We generally work 16 hours a day. As a carman, our job is to inspect the rail cars and ensure the safety of the public. Yet we still have these safety problems on the railroad. I mean, back in our day, and still today, we have to get 58, 56 hours for apprenticeship program. It took me 2.5 years to get it. And now we got these guys getting it in a year and a half.
Wow.
I mean, and they're coming out of their time. And so, but yet these new hires now after 3 months are being turned loose and they're working by themselves without the knowledge to inspect these rail cars. But yet they get rode up every day. I mean, no one cares. They fail O test every single day. But we just had an apprentice quit 3 weeks ago for the safety issues due to fatigue and harassment.
Wow.
I mean, safety went out the window when the railroad started the PSR. It went from safety to get my train out on time. They give you 10 minutes before the train. But they'll give you 10 minutes, the train gets there. They want 30 minutes for you to work it.
Wow.
And they want it out in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And Waycross, we run up 1,300 cars per shift. I mean, these trains come in 12,000 feet long, and the trains keep the yards blocked up all day long. I mean, these longer trains are really a big deal. They steady at the block places like Waycross. I mean, Waycross, Georgia is a steady block place. People in Waycross are upset with that because some of the people cannot get out of their driveways. They've called the police. The police are planning on citing CSX before the train. So, I mean, it's really a big issue with PSR in Waycross, Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Bobby. So, you know, we got fatigue factor, we got, you know, egregious work hours, and all of that creates a situation where all these workers could attest to the fact that it's creating unsafe work conditions. Brandon, would you like to add anything on the safety issue? Brandon Redman.
Yes, sir. Brandon Redman, TW local 2053 here. As far as what Bobby was saying, we're having the same issues in Elkhart, except for a lot of our new trainees, they're being turned loose less than 3 months and they don't know what they're doing, but they're being shoved out there and just said, you know, get it done. And they're also being disciplined and they're being held to the same responsibilities as journeymen. And but there's a lot of safe train issues and worker safety issues. When I hired in 2009, we had 80 carmen out there, and now we're just around 50. So you have less guys doing the same amount of work, plus even more cars coming in. So there's more demand. we have our carmen are forced over for additional shifts with like an hour heads up. They might, it might be not sometimes 20 minutes for the end of your shift to say, oh, guess what? We couldn't get nobody. So you're sticking around for another shift. And that 16-hour days, sometimes guys get hit 3 to 5 days a week. And it's impossible for someone to be arrested for an additional shift when they don't have any kind of a heads up, to prepare. And taking into account all the additional stuff that people have to do, like responsibilities in life, such as driving to and from work, that's outside of your 16-hour shift. You got to get food for your family and yourself, and paying bills and childcare and hygiene and everything that goes along with it. When you add in that 16 hours that you're actually on property, sometimes a minimum 16, it's unsafe. It creates a real problem. And that continued grind by the carmen that haven't quit yet is taking a toll on them. It's a lot of these guys are doing improper inspections and class 1 brake tests, and their improper pre-departure inspections, just because they know if there's freight left on the table at the end of the shift, if it's not done on paper, guess what? You're not going home. So that leads to a lot of unsafe activity. And when I hired on, there was 10 to 12 inspectors every shift working in the yard. And now there's 6 per shift, but the freight hasn't declined. It's probably increased. So you got more freight, less inspectors, obviously quicker times because it's not realistic. And at the end of the day, if we were properly staffed, there would be safe and rested employees. Proper inspections would be being completed, and you'd have safer freight and trains on the travel in the country, and you'd have greater employee retention.
Well, thanks for that, Brandon. The irony of this is that the pandemic showed the world that health and safety has to go hand in hand, especially on the job. And rail workers, as we all know, are essential workers. And frankly, I don't think you've gotten the public recognition that you have earned. So I want to hear from someone about what it's like as an essential worker during this pandemic. So I'm going to call on Willette Thomas. Willette, could you tell us what has been your experience during the pandemic as a essential worker? Willette?
I chuckle at the word essential worker because the world didn't recognize us as essential workers. Only the company used it to, keep us coming to work every day. We started off where we weren't fully, I work for CSX. I'm a crew dispatcher. I work in a building that houses crew dispatchers as well as train dispatchers. I've been with the railroad for 23 years, and I've been a dispatcher probably like around 8 years. So like I said, we started off where we weren't really protected in the building. And because we were told that we were essential workers, we had to come to work every day. There were other properties and other clerks that were able to work from home, but we were not. They started with giving us petitions that when you sit down, the petitions, barely reached our shoulder. We asked to be, have more separation. That took a while coming. They finally gave us petitions that made sense, so that were actually taller than us. They eventually started providing masks and wipes, but of course those things were running out, and there were times when we had to use our own supplies, or wait for them to gather the supplies, or if the management was too busy to go get the supplies. So, we had to deal with all of that. We're a 24/7 operation in a building where we desk share. So even prior to COVID, it was very important that we wipe desks down because we're desk sharing over 3 shifts. Then the layoffs came. So when the layoffs started coming, we were being forced to 16-hour shifts. Every day we would go to work and didn't know if we were coming home, besides after a 16-hour shift. And then we started getting COVID in the building. And I would honestly venture to say that 99% of us got COVID in the building. We had deaths, we had crew dispatchers that passed away. We had managers that passed away. We had train dispatchers that passed away. These are people's families, their husbands, their sons, these were family members that were passing away as a result of not being properly, protected in the building. Then we, after all of that, I said to myself at one time, I know that we have EAP, and it's understood we have EAP, but nobody ever really said, you know, if you need EAP, do you need EAP? Are you okay? Are you all emotionally, mentally okay? No one ever asked. It was just told, you know, we're going to work 16 hours. Then we made a handshake agreement to work 12 hours. So that helped relieve some of the wear and tear. And that was helpful. However, and then they started hiring. I want to say this because a lot of us have spoke about 16-hour shifts. And so people would say that we're making money and now, you know, we don't have a contract. But here's the thing with crew dispatchers. So now that they have hired, we're not being forced to 16 anymore. So all the money that I had saved up from my 16 hours is starting to get depleted in this inflation, you know, now because the gas prices are higher, the food is higher, you know, so everything that I did make, you know, without a contract, without a raise, you know, is now becoming still depleted. So I don't want people to have the misnomer that, you know, we're making all this money, so we should be okay. That's not the case. And then we still have properties like Waycross, and I'll close with this. We still have properties with Waycross that where we have clerks that have not been rehired. So they're short of they're still short and still being forced to 16 hours. And again, I'm sorry, my last closing is this right here. As an essential worker, I never felt like an essential worker. I was never recognized as an essential worker in the world. You know, I get it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. But when I have someone say that I have to come to work every day because I'm an essential worker, but I never benefited from it, that was disheartening. You're muted, Mr. Redmond.
I'm sorry, we've only been doing these virtual meetings for 3 years. I think you learn how to unmute by now. So look, what we have learned so far, these are demanding jobs. They physically take a toll, and you are also paying the price by being away from your families more often than not. And there's safety and health concerns too. Are these trade-offs, and maybe that's the wrong word, trade-offs, but for the sake of this question, are these trade-offs reflected in the pay and benefit you earn? I mean, the railroads have publicly said that the average railroad worker makes $130,000 a year. Eugene, is that true?
That is not true. The mechanical service operators are probably the lowest paid railroad workers. I'm sorry. The cost of living and inflation, everything's going up, and everything except for our pay. You know, we go on 3 years without a contract, and the mechanical service operators are being tasked with more work, but no pay, without benefiting with more pay. So we're being asked to change brake shoes, do oil and water and 9414 work, but not get the pay the machinists and electricians get for doing that type of work.
I see. So the railroad companies have really pushed this out. I'm sorry.
Going up, it's harder. It's expensive to go to work.
Okay.
And put it that way.
All right. Thank you.
Prices and all the other stuff going up, food, you know, trying to make ends meet is, you know.
Okay, so the railroads company is really pushing this information out there. Some of these folks make on average of $130,000 a year. Eugene has testified that that's not the case. So,
go ahead, Mr.
Rodney, what do you say about this, Rodney?
Well, I agree that that's not the case at all. Our mean wage at the locomotive shop that I work at in Altoona, Pennsylvania, is only around $33 per hour. You would have to work a significant amount of overtime in order to achieve $130,000 gross in a year's time. As Mike, the electrician, had mentioned earlier, our location experienced severe furloughs as well. As late as 2015, we employed 1,100 workers, and that number has since dropped to under 400. Okay. And because of that, we all have bills. I purchased a home, I have a mortgage, car payment, things like that. And because of that, and the nature of how deep they cut with the furloughs, I took on a second job about a year and a half ago. So I would have an avenue of escape if the furloughs hit me. After 16 years, I should not have to worry about whether or not my career is safe whenever we have companies that are making $146 billion profit since 2015. If you do the mathematics on that stuff, they have basically profited each year by $172,000 off of every single railroad worker. And they're offering us raises of 60 cents an hour. That equates to $1,200 a year. I think the disparity there is quite evident.
Yeah.
One of the things that is really prevalent at our shop is the concern for our contract at this point. In years past, whenever we'd go through negotiations, some people would have an opinion, some people wouldn't care. Other ones were close to retirement, so they felt indifferent about the subject at all. We have 100% participation as far as the conversations go with concerns regarding this particular collective bargaining agreement. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a desire, and we want to see it through and actually get what we deserve, because like Willett said, we did not feel essential, even though we had to work the entire way through the pandemic. They never made us feel as though we were as necessary as what they claimed to the public we were.
Gotcha. Thanks a lot, Rodney. Look, we got a lot to say, and I'm going to, I want to get through all of these questions because, look, you've told a very compelling story and a very accurate update to our audience in terms of what's happening in this industry. So when you put this together, we're talking about stagnant wages, long hours, and safety concerns. There seems to be a quality of life problems with these jobs. And Luke, I'm going to ask you, Luke, if you could just share some light on the whole issue regarding the quality of life when it comes to the jobs in this industry. Luke?
Yeah, thank you. Luke Eddington, General Chairman, Smart Transportation, General Committee of Adjustment 953 in Topeka. My committee, we represent trainmen on Union Pacific from Seattle all the way to Chicago, the north half. I started my career with UP back in 1998 as a switchman. I worked as switchman, foreman, conductor, brakeman, all through Nebraska and the surrounding states. 2015, I was elected as a full-time officer. Since then, and throughout my years on property, a majority of the time on my property, I rode extra board as a conductor. And most weeks I'd be home 48 to 60 hours total time at home. The rest of the time was spent on a train in a hotel room somewhere. The quality of life for the rail workers today, it's deteriorated even more. We deal with countless employees every week in my office that call who are just burned out. They're tired, they're mental fatigue, body fatigue. They got injured on the job. They resigned because they just can't take it anymore. And these aren't brand new employees. They're employees that have been around for 20 plus years. They have majority of their adult life vested in the rail industry, and they're willing to let it go because they just can't take it anymore. Current problems that we still see today that we've been fighting is just this unrealistic production expectations, cutting jobs, combining jobs. Just no way that these members can get this work done, the workload they give them. It's the inability to take compensated days off, constant manpower shortages, the long working hours. It's mandatory overtime on our side. These guys are beating the ballast every day, beating up their knees, tying brakes. They're working, walking 5 to 10 miles a day on this ballast, 12 hours a day. That takes its toll. And if they don't get it done, they're threatened with insubordination from management. Despite having these manpower shortages and not being able to fill new hire classes on the north half of UP, the number of discipline and dismissals that we have coming into my office has increased. They're firing more people. It doesn't even cover the people that have resigned, have been terminated, that went off injured. They're falling behind on the hiring. The current wages and the need for our contract is to get us competitive again. You know, this is a demanding job, and our people out there are professionals. They know what they're doing. They want to move freight. They want to keep the nation's economy moving, but they can't do it with the resources they have. And until we get contracts where we're competitive, the railroads assertion that they make 130,000 a year is wrong. The average conductor makes around 67 and an engineer 73. That's after you've been there. You know, they're including all the payroll taxes, insurance, benefits. You look at their take-home wage and you compare their take-home wage to other jobs out there, it won't be an attractive job. You have to sacrifice too much of your family time. So we need this so we can get the people there so our current workforce has some relief.
Thanks a lot, Luke. And thanks for clarifying that 130 piece, because, you know, they're talking about the total benefit package, and we just need to clarify that for the public. So, you know, I really appreciate you bringing some clarity to that issue. Nick, what do you think?
Thanks, Brother Fred. Nick Revich, local 278 Smart TD out of Detroit, Michigan. So there's a bigger issue here. And the message from the workers, from the boots on the ground, from our members, is that they've had enough. They've had enough of being tasked with carrying the burden of the inability of these freight railroads operating plants, the inability for them to operate an efficient railroad. All the burden is being put on the shoulders of the employees, but they're getting none of the benefits, from the stagnant wages to the safety exposures to the day-to-day blatant disregard for the collective bargain agreements on property. Instead of being treated as valuable assets, they're being treated as numbers, and people are tired of it, and they're not going to put up with it anymore. People are resigning en masse, and that needs to be seen by the public. People are done. What was once a highly regarded craft and a career has been dwindled down to a job that they can't even hire people for, when a minimum requirement is a high school diploma or a GED. It's actually deplorable what's happened to this industry. You used to go to a hiring session and there would be 400 people standing in a room for 4 openings. Now they can't get 4 people to show up when they want to hire 400 people. There's a problem. And the problem is there's no consideration given for the employees in their personal life. You could have 25 years on the railroad, and if you say the year before, I request to have Thanksgiving off so I can be with my family, or I want Halloween off so I can be with my kids and go trick-or-treating, it's denied. It's a request. It's simply that. Permission time, accrued vacation time, it's all declined. It's subject to somebody's discretion due to the needs of service and the manpower if they allow it. Just because you've accrued it from working there for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years does not mean that you get it. So something else I wanted to say, that this manpower across all of these freight railroads, it's self-imposed. And the furloughs started pre-pandemic, continued into the pandemic, mixed with the mass resignations due to the safety exposures and the way that all of our members have been treated as critical, essential infrastructure workers, which we've heard time and time again from all our brothers and sisters. That's what our label was, but we never were treated that way. Now, how do we get treated for working through this pandemic? We get draconian attendance policies. And I wanted to shed some light on one of the attendance policies explicitly from Norfolk Southern. So their attendance policy set up for an employee, a member who's on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, can mark off no more than 1 weekend day in a 90-day window. So you wake up, you work Friday morning, you get home Friday afternoon, you get your mandatory 10 hours off. Say you mark off at 11 p.m. sick because you didn't sleep all day, but you're subject to call. So you fall asleep at 11 p.m., you mark off sick, and then you wake up after 4 hours and you're back available at 3 a.m. So you had an event of 4 hours, you marked off sick. Well, because Friday turns into Saturday, they count it as 2 days and you're an automatic violation of the attendance policy. That is absolutely unreasonable during the state of the pandemic, during the state of the self-imposed manpower shortages. You're asking these guys and gals to work without a contract for many years. It's my opinion that pure attrition doesn't reduce the workforce quick enough to satisfy the carrier and the shareholders' PSR models and operating ratio goals. So in turn, they're imposing their will on the employees, seemingly in hopes the resignations continue en masse. I mean, it's a bad state, and it's not going to get better unless the atmosphere changes, and it starts with these carriers.
Thank you very much, Nick. Look, as we come into the end of this session, look, these are troubling times. We've talked about job cuts, the physical and emotional costs of these jobs. We talked about the health and safety concerns and overall quality of life struggles. And look, at this point, because we are at our 1 hour time limit for this event, you know, I was going to open the floor to the workers to provide closing comments, but I want, I'm going to call upon Greg, Greg Reagan to close us out. But before I do, let me just say this. On behalf of the AFL-CIO, our 57 affiliate unions, and our 12.5 million members, and I want to be clear, and I want the press to understand this and those out in the listening audience. These workers are not alone, okay? This is an issue, what's happening in this industry, that goes to the issue of national security. So what we're doing is we're calling upon this administration to intervene, and we're demanding that these companies do the right thing by their workers. Okay, when you took these workers on, and I want the press to get this straight, when these railway companies took these workers on, you took on the AFL-CIO and the American labor movement. These workers are not alone, okay? And we're going to stand with these workers. We're going to fight with these workers until they get the contract that they deserve, until they're treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. But I just want folks to understand that the American labor movement is not going away. This is an atrocious issue, and we're calling for an immediate intervention from this administration, who are our friends. This is a worker-friendly administration. We're asking you to intervene on behalf of these workers in this industry, and we're demanding that these companies do the right thing. So with that, for the close us out, I want to call upon our president, Greg Reagan, to close us out with the final words. Greg.
Thank you so much, Fred. And I couldn't have said it any better in terms of the strength and the solidarity that the labor movement is going to bring on behalf of all of you to deliver a contract that you have earned. You've been delivering for this country. It's time for this country to deliver for you. And, I think the stories that you told today are, really show how this is impacting everyone's daily life. But, I think that these compound. Every single worker that's facing these issues is, these issues compound and have a broader effect on our entire country. This is, frankly, it's a patriotic thing to do, to support you all in the work you're doing. So I look forward to delivering, because we're going to fight, and we're going to win this fight on behalf of 115,000 railroad workers who are delivering for this country. We are going to deliver for you. And I look forward to doing that. To all of you who may be watching this town hall out there, and if you would like to show your support in solidarity with these workers, go to our website, ttd.org. That's ttd.org. Find the Rail Negotiations tab on the homepage menu. And from there, you can add your name to our petition, download our digital toolkit, and find a railroad worker rally near you. I know I've gone out there and gone to a couple of them, and nothing is more inspirational than going and talking to people on the ground, people that are giving up their Saturdays or their Sundays to show solidarity and fight for rights that they've earned. And one of the things that I've found to be most inspiring about all of this is it's not just railroad workers who are out there. You see people from bakery and confectionery union members, or you see AFSCME members and teachers and communication workers. All of these people are out there because they recognize that a fight for one labor union, or in this case, 13 labor unions, is a fight with all labor unions. And we're going to fight for you and deliver what you all deserve. And thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your stories today.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to open the floor to workers for final comments here.
And if you could just, if any of the workers on the call want to make a brief final comments, if you just raise your hand. Mike.
We have,
Mike, I believe you're on mute.
Hi, Mike Gage again. I just wanted to add, a little bit that in the last quarter, UP made 1.8 billion in profit. That's $17 million a day. And a couple, just real quick note, like Justin said, he's a multi-generational railroader. We're not seeing that anymore. We're not seeing grandsons and sons go to work at the railroad. We're seeing people, just like Nick and Luke said, with 10, 15, 20 years walking away from this job and quitting. That used to be unheard of, and I think these factors are just a byproduct of the deteriorating work environment that we have out there and the attitude of the workforce. I don't know what I'd do without a union out there. I'm just thankful for that. So that's all I had to add. Thank you. Thanks for doing
Mike.
this, too.
Thank you. Devin?
Yeah, thank you, brother. So there's just one thing I just want to say really quick. The railroads can put up however many jobs that they want. They can put up thousands and thousands of jobs, but nobody's going to go to them. And we've been seeing that over and over. And we're actually going to lose more and more if we don't get a good contract and the work environment doesn't change. Those two things are vital. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Dennis? Dennis, you're on mute. You need to come off of mute, Dennis.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
I didn't say this before, but I'm Carmen from Pittsburgh with the TWU, Local 2035. But anyway, I just wanted to say there's a lot more conditions and things that are going on that we haven't touched on. And I believe there probably is going to be more layoffs because of automation and things like that we haven't even discussed. So I guess there's more to it than we're all kind of maybe not aware of, but maybe the public's not aware of. So I just wanted to, add that a little bit.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to make some final comments? Any other panelists? Okay, yeah, Reese.
Hey, hello. I just want to add that, carriers, we get these headlines, we're hiring, right? We want to hire more people, but first, you got to take care of the people that you have. As mechanics to travel the system, we have to have a lot of skills. We have to have CDL driver's license, certified welders. We have to work on diesel engines, hydraulics, electrical. If you're not going to pay these guys right, these skills are in high demand, and we're constantly hiring. We never have enough people. We're working long hours because we're doing two people's jobs. And it's just take care of the people you have. That's all I want to say.
Thanks a lot, Reese. Bob Holyfield, did you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to say on that the railroads are going to have to start taking better care of the employees they have and work to improve the quality of life that we have away from the railroad, our time away where we're not on call, continuous. It just takes a toll on our families, our spouses, our children, our grandchildren, all suffer from that. And it's not always even about the money. It's about the way we're treated and the quality of life. It's also going to affect our ability to attract talented people to come in and work these jobs because the being on call continuous just takes an emotional toll on you after so long that they just won't stay. We're losing people, bright, young, qualified people who are going to jobs that are paying actually more money now than the railroad does and have much more personal time available to them.
Thanks, Bob. Well said. Nate?
Yes, thanks, Brother Fred. Yeah, I just had a message to the membership that the carriers view you as an employee, but with the union, you're a member. And that's powerful because as an organization, collectively, like all these organizations here today, we have strength in numbers. That's always been our power. And the members need to stand tall, stay strong, and keep at the fight because we collectively, all of us are serving our membership. And that's our job, but we need them to stay on task to participate and stay in the fight with us. And we got their backs.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Anyone else? Okay, well, that.
I just want to echo the fact that, with all of us having to, fight so hard for a contract, but yet we're still even in the clerical force, the people that they are hiring are not being trained properly. So, we still have a bunch of write-ups. We're still getting cited for FMLA markups that shouldn't be so. It's a lot of, you feel more harassed than you do, like an an essential employee. I'll go back to that, so they also need to look at our attendance policies, the different, discipline policies that are rolled down towards us as well, because they're causing us that, it's a hardship mentally and emotionally to have to deal with that every day as well, even in the clerical force of going to work and wondering if you're going to get written up, or if you're going to have to work extra hard to assist a new hire that wasn't trained properly. Because even in the clerical force, they're being pushed out quick too. They're not getting the full training. I was trained for a long time. I just say that they're getting pushed out in a matter of 30 days and thrown on the floor to start making calls. And even though we're in the office, we're calling, we're calling conductors and engineers, and if they're getting the wrong call or the improper information, then it causes a safety issue for them. So it does roll down. So we want to make sure, that those things are addressed as well.
Thanks, Willette. Rodney?
Yes, what I wanted to say, Fred, was, we do have people that are being called back from furlough, and they are going through more phone calls than what they're getting in bodies that want to come back. And to that point, the new hires that they are hiring system-wide, they're offering sign-on bonuses in the neighborhood of like $5,000, as well as a $2,000 recommendation bonus for an existing railroad worker that refers someone to come work for the railroad. They're throwing all this kind of money around, trying to entice people to come to work for a job they do not want to, while the people that are working those jobs aren't adequately being rewarded for what they have done and what they do on a daily basis. Hopefully our contract that we're going to get will reflect that reward to us as well, because they have the money to do it.
Thanks, Rodney. Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, I would like to encourage our listeners to please visit the TTD website. As President Greg Reagan have stated, information regarding rallies and events around this struggle is posted there. And to the press, any questions that you may have, any follow-up questions regarding this town hall forum, you could please address them to Samantha Brown. Her email address is on the press advisory that was sent to each and every one of you. So I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to commend the participants of this town hall. I think that you all done an outstanding job articulating the struggle that you are in, but I just want to emphasize that you're not in this struggle alone. Our goal and our objective and our mission is we're going to last just one day longer than these rail companies. That's all it takes. We're going to last one day longer to them, and we're going to stand together until we achieve a victory for all of the members in this industry that we're privileged to represent. So thank everybody for attending, and the struggle continues.